Hello! Welcome to our Transmedia webinar, How to Design Your Factual Projects for Maximum Impact. We have a great panel of experts today who will be discussing how to use Transmedia to create impact and deliver change. We'll start discussing how to make changes in the individual, and then we'll talk about how to spread the word and how to make those changes go to bigger communities and how to reach out to bigger communities. And remember, you can ask questions via Twitter using the hashtag #CreateImpact. So please do ask us questions and make your comments and everything you want to share. And now I'm going to let the speakers to introduce themselves and tell us who they are and what they do. So I'm going to start with Yuri.
Hello, my name is Yuri Andreyevich. I'm the chairman of the Games for Health Europe Foundation. We design behavioral change with games as a design principle. We produce, for the last almost 20 years, more than 800 games which changed people's behavior to the better, change systems and change organizations.
Great, thank you. Now, Nidra, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Nir Winerich, and I have been working in social change and health behavior change for the past 25 years or so, primarily as a consultant, working with government agencies like the CDC, like the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, other things like that, and as well as nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits. A lot of what I do centers around helping organizations to reach the populations who they want to work with to create some kind of change, whether it's going to make people more healthy, whether it's going to create changes in their communities to make it better in some way. And so I work with them to strategize and create programs, sometimes transmedia and sometimes more traditional kinds of things. I also have taught at the UCLA School of Public Health a course on social marketing, marketing for social impact for the past 8 years, although I'm not doing that anymore because I recently just moved to Israel. So I've been here for just a couple of weeks and still getting settled, which is why it looks like I'm in an empty box here. We don't have much furniture yet. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, Paul, can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Paul Irwin, and I created Try Life, which is an online interactive drama series aimed at young people. So if you imagine the old choice-based adventure books where you could decide what route you're going to take, that's basically what Try Life was built on. So the action pauses and the user gets to decide what happens next. All of the episodes are all issue-based and all centered around things that young people will encounter in real life, and that's Try Life.
Awesome. And now, Vicki, can you tell us who you are?
Hi, I'm Vicki Callahan. I'm at the University of Southern California in the Media Arts and Practice Division, and we have a unique program that's everything is theory practice, and so we read history and we read theory, but we always have a practical component to everything we do. I worked for a time as a consultant in various documentaries trying to have a outreach campaign, but mainly right now what I'm doing is I'm working for USC in a class called New Media for Social Change as one of the many things I teach. That's the main thing, though, where we have a community engagement component to the class. And so the community partners we've had have been grammar schools, high schools, community groups in the neighborhood around USC, and then also community groups on campus as well. So student activist groups have worked with us. So we do a range of projects. We usually do a different kind of project each semester. We work with a different community group.
Great. Thank you very much to the panel for being here and sharing your experience with us. And I'll start with the start. I'll put this question in the air. If there's a burning issue there is something, a problem that you want to tackle or an issue that you want to, approach. How do you start? In your experience, I mean, in all these things that you share with us, what has been, your starting point? I'm going to begin with Nidra.
Okay. I think you have to start very strategically. I think, unfortunately, a lot of organizations start by saying, this is the issue we want to do. Let's create a transmedia campaign. Let's create a Facebook page or Twitter or a video without thinking through the whole process in a really strategic way. So the first thing you need to do is really to think about what is it you're trying to accomplish, way beyond just raising awareness of the issue. Too many people start and stop with awareness, but awareness only gets you so far, and what we need to do is to try to move people towards action. So identifying what that action is that you want people to take, being very specific about what will it look like, how will you know when it happens, is critical. And then you need to figure out who is it that needs to be doing that action, and that will lay the foundation for everything that you do after that.
Yeah, and I would say just kind of piggybacking off of that, like that's a sort of a first starting point, but even beyond that, not even assuming what that topic or issue is, have a kind of a general concept, but then the groups that you want to work with, really getting their input on how they think that issue resonates for them, because they may have a very different take or different takes on how to approach that topic. So you may go in there with one concept, and the community or the organization really has a different outcome that they would like to see, or issues that they want to see related to that. So I think the most important thing is beginning with listening to the community or the organization that you want to work with.
Okay, that's great. And taking into consideration, starting with the individual, I like to ask how to encourage changes in personal behavior. So, Yuri, you build applied games in the healthcare sector and to actually generate these changes and change the behavior in people. So, when a client comes to you, how do you approach the problem? I mean, what's the strategy? How do you think about a game for those situations?
Well, what we also always do is we define the moonshot. So we use the system that's called backward reasoning or scenario-based reasoning. We would know people's moonshot, and we start often from organizations. So moonshot for an airline could be: will we be an airline without planes? For a healthcare institute, we will define a moonshot together, where they say it's about health, not healthcare. So we will be the first healthcare institute that delivers no care, because we focus on health. From that, we would like to design the behavioral change, and we use often a model of B.G. Fogg from Stanford. And you have three types of behavioral change. Behavioral change for once, for a short period of time, and forever. And you have to get rid of old behavior, or you have to learn new behavior. And often in healthcare, it's about lifestyle interventions, which is the hardest, because it's doing something from now on for the rest of your life, or doing not something from now on for the rest of your life. But that's the hardest part. So where we start is we design a path towards that permanent behavior. And that's letting people do one thing new for once. And from that, we discover iteratively, let's let them do something for a short period of time that they like, which is new. And then we introduce something which they won't do for a day, for example, which they did before, for a short period of time. So we basically design a path towards the permanent desired behavioral change. Not beginning by the hardest part, but the easy part.
Okay. That's really interesting. And how do you decide on the mechanics of this applied game it's going to be, and the participation?
Games are quite easy. There are only 6 archetypes of games, and there are only 16 game theories. So the only thing we have to discover is what behavioral change would we like to see, what actions in real life requires those behavioral change, and what game actions, what action in a game to be able to make that transfer to reality is required. So we put it all in a blender, and we put it on, and then various combinations might be the outcome, because there are various paths towards that desired behavioral change.
And how do you, like Julian, how do you decide on the timeline for that? Like, do you say to someone, well, we want to see a change in a week or in a day, or do you give them a month? How do you decide how long they've got?
Well, for that, to change the behavior of a system or an organization, it requires 40 months in our experience. But for someone to stay loyal to a therapy, we always take a medicine, for example. We take the time required someone needs to take that medicine. So if it's a chronic illness, it's probably for the rest of his life. And then we say we probably won't do that. So we take a year. But less than a year is easier. More than a year is harder. But also, change in a short period of time is also hard. So when it's about a couple of months, between a couple of months and a year, those are the sweet things to change.
Really good.
And like, how much? Like, I always think of things like Weight Watchers, where it's the like having the community support. Really helps make the change. And I had like a friend of mine teaches, or used to teach meditation to prisoners. And he said the thing is, they make this great progress, and as soon as they leave prison, they go back into a community that just won't let them change, and they fall back into these old ways. So, how important is that?
Oh, it's very important. We are actually in a program with prisoners where we change their behavior after detention, because we build up a future for them during detention. So we will work with them on having an income, having a living, basic stuff like that from prison. And where you started intrigued me. What did you start with?
About Weight Watchers, being in the community. Like.
Well, there's a big difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. If I lay a couple of pieces of puzzle on the table, people start automatically figure out how it works. If I ask you, if you fix this puzzle, you get 10 pounds, it will take you longer to finish the puzzle. So there's a big difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation, like money, rewards, stuff like that, ruins.
Brilliant.
Can I just like for us, behaviour change had to come. Like we're fighting 2 battles. So my background was youth and community work based to start off with. So I've always done work with young people. And just to give you an example of the financial crisis, what kind of impact it had on the team I was working with. I was working as part of a teenage pregnancy team, and I think there was about 36 people. After the financial crisis, that team's now down to 3. It's just like all of the services for young people were like stripped, like beyond bare, really. So when I was working for a major charity, I tried to set up a Facebook page to engage with some of the young people that we were working with, because obviously all young people use Facebook. And the organisation was terrified to engage with young people online. And that was like a lot down to the stigma still attached to the internet. So even though the internet to most people seems just like an everyday thing, for some organisations they're terrified of being well, just terrified of like grooming and the whole sort of media thing. So we had to, with TryLife, one, get organisations used to dealing with young people online, because that's where young people are using Facebook and social media. And then our second battle with behaviour change, I guess, or the best way to describe TryLife is, a lot of the lessons I've learned in life have been through my own mistakes. And what we wanted to do with TryLife was try and create a really authentic drama series that young people can relate to. So we used like Facebook, social media, we used drama, we used like just all of the media that young people are familiar with, but we wanted to give young people real choice. So sometimes if the character decides to smoke a spliff, they'll be all right. They're not instantly going to be ill. They're not instantly going to have a psychotic episode. So when we were constructing TryLife, if you decide to smoke a spliff, sometimes you'll be fine, but it will still have a consequence the next day. So the character has got an exam the next day, and they'll turn off their alarm, skip breakfast, forget the pen. So it has like it does, like everything has a consequence. But just nurturing organisations to try and like sort of de-risk TryLife and show it as a really good way of engaging with young people was one of our biggest battles. I mean, like our Facebook page has now got like 600,000 Facebook fans, right? And in the not the week on, but the week before, we had 8.6 million people engage with that page, and it reached 90 million. And it's not until we've got to that stage that organisations and different bodies in the UK are starting to take notice and realise that actually social media can be used for a force for good, rather than just surrender it to all of the negativity that's obviously broadcast in the news. But,
well, I think the strength of TryLife, Paul, is the authenticity. That's what, like, the youngsters, you know, like, they see it and it feels real, but that's also what puts off the institutions.
Of course, I mean, like our episodes, what we do is we'll go and engage with the professionals in an area, and if they've got a particular issue, say like in Southeast London, it was exploitation of young girls by gang members. So we just dive straight in and we'll work with the professionals and ask them, like, what is the best case scenario for these young women? What's the worst case scenario? And that forms like the basic framework of our storylines. But all of our stories, even though they're directed from the top down in terms of their approach, they're all created by the young people that these organisations are struggling to engage with. So instead of spending £60,000 on a leaflet drop and it not really reaching the people, or not having any kind of data or any acknowledgement of like sort of how many people have seen that, we can sort of quantify that, and hopefully, I mean, we've got a piece of research being done on TryLife very soon from Oxford Uni, and it's just fascinating watching young people play it. One of the things that we found, just very quickly, I don't want to take up everyone's time, but one of the things that we found was when we were engaging with professionals, they were like, yeah, go to the party, yeah, smoke a spliff, yeah, you do this, do that, and then the character would end up in a really bad place. And when we ran through it a second time, the professionals were like, no, she's staying at home, no, she's not doing anything, no, and they would try and protect the character the second time. With young people, it's a complete opposite. What we found is that the young people will play it, make all of the right choices, and then stop and look and sort of say, like, have we passed? And that's like sort of how conditioned the young people are. And we just say, like, it's not a test. Just go in and play it again and make some mistakes and see what happens. And hopefully, if we can use all the tricks in media and like really good solid evidence base for the construction of the episodes. I'm hoping that what TriLife does is evoke that emotional response in someone, so when they're presented with that situation in real life, they've already got the skill set to deal with it.
Really good. So in TriLife, what you do actually is to give the audience a role, to put them in the shoes of the protagonist and showing them the impact of their decisions. So what did you think? Why did you think that was the best approach to do it? And do you think it's important to give the audience a role in this kind of factual projects?
Well, like I think with TriLife, it was like because you use film, it's really easy to build an emotional attachment with the user. So for the first 2 episodes, the first episode has got about 26 possible routes through it. The second has 60. And the characters were 17 or 18-year-old and able to, like at that age, make decisions for themselves. So sometimes we'll throw a curveball and it'll seem like a very innocent choice that you've made, but it will send you down like a completely different path. With the 3rd episode that's due for release shortly, we changed the format a little bit because the character was a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. So for the first time, because when you think of a 15-year-old, not all of the choices that they have, or not all of the decisions are something that they can decide upon. So at 15-year-old, you have to do what your parents say, or you have to do what your teachers say. So it's the first time that we've given the user the chance to decide whether his teacher is all right with him or not, or if his mom is okay with him or not. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of difference that makes. I mean,
yeah.
It's especially with the younger character in episode 3 that's due for release.
Yeah.
What we found, like with people testing it, is that people felt more nurturing towards him, and I think especially with the younger audience, because they were the first 2 characters were 17 or 18-year-old, it was more like their like sort of peer. But this time, even with that age range, when they're like sort of doing the game testing at the moment, they sort of feel like they've got to try and protect this character. So hopefully that means we're on the right track and we're using the media to stimulate the response that we're hoping to get.
Jurgen, you wanted to add this?
Yeah, I think an explanation for that is between a leaflet and building this community. We discovered that if people spend time to something, to a certain subject, it becomes valuable. So if you want people to change, you first need to let them spend time on the subject you want to change to see happening. And it's a funny psychological thing. If people spend a lot of time on a certain subject, it becomes valuable, and then you have them.
But how do you mean spend a lot of time doing? Do you mean like in the negative state before they change, or?
No, it could be even giving attention by, or let them talk about a certain subject, let them play with a certain subject, without even the need of that desired behavioral change to be designed. Let them spend time on the subject you want to start seeing them changing their behavior first, and then start working on the change.
So how important is, like I always think, sometimes people have this idea that if I give lots of information out, then people will like rationally change their behavior because they're in, they've got all this knowledge. But that's not the case, is it?
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not the case. There are some things about which all you need to do is just give people the information and they will make a change, but that's not very common. If it were, then doctors would be the healthiest people in the world because they've got all the information. But they're people too, and so rationality doesn't always play into every decision that we make. So that's why we do have to start thinking about things like how we can bring in emotion, and storytelling is a great way to do that. Bring in ways of building empathy. Bring in ways of really kind of exciting people about the topic and helping them to connect in a more personal way with it.
And I think that's really interesting, because it's almost like, I feel like too many iDocs are all about just giving people information. Like this is interactive documentary, but actually it's a website like a library or Wikipedia, and I kind of click around, there's some like amazing graphics, but all I do is I just get more information.
Yeah, but Robert, think of the time you spend on a certain subject a day, and think of the things that value. I think you might find an analogy or parallelity.
How do you mean? Like, because I don't spend long enough on the site, I'm like, whatever.
No, if you read a document, it's for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you haven't spent time on it, so it won't become valuable to you anyhow.
So you may be, I mean, what that sounds to me then, Julian, is if I were to create like some kind of like ongoing experience, some kind of ongoing story that went over several like weeks.
Yes.
It's going to be top of mind. It's going to be more.
And that's what I call transformative experience. And that's the design you want to see. You want to change something. We are talking about behavioral change to create impact. So it's not about behavior, it's about behavioral change or behavior improvement. And that means transformative. So then you want to give people a transformative experience, and that requires time over a certain period of time.
Yeah, I might kind of come at this a different way, which is to say, to think about the issue also that was raised about empathy and how you create empathy. One of the things we've done is, in my class, you know, we only have 16 weeks to both create awareness and change, which doesn't really happen in terms of big change, right? But one of the things we have to do is to, you know, begin to make connections and to create some empathy across diverse groups. And one of the things, just hearing these ideas, is not just thinking of media as an outcome, but media as the dialogue tool. So that is to say, so one of the things that we do in my class as a way to build empathy and even a connection toward a project we might work together on is what I call an active listening exercise. So the active listening exercise is actually video. They actually do a practice that comes out of conflict resolution, community activism. So we begin that with as a kind of strategy of listening, but then we build it into video projects. And they work with their collaborators, their community partners, in this kind of active listening practice to then create videos. So I think one of the ways to then, which we then share, right, and then people are like, wow, that's like really amazing videos. It's not just information, there's a kind of dialogue that's created and it really comes across. So I think one of the things I might kind of think about here is not just, you know, something that you pathway through, but using media as that connecting point of both storytelling and dialogue.
Really good.
So, I mean, I was going to say, this is one of the things that's nice about Paul's projects, that Paul, you always work with the community that are actually in the videos, don't you? You don't work with actors.
No. Like I said earlier, like our process is we engage with the professionals, find out all of the horror stories and all of the the goodness that can come out of their work, and then we just dive straight in and like a lot of the young people that we engage with, like if you look at Try Life, we try to give as many young people as possible the opportunity to create it. So young people write it. We'll go and engage with the colleges and universities and get third-year hair and beauty students to do like makeup and hair design. We'll get young directors, just like any young people that want to be in the background, that want to create music for their episodes. The whole thing is a massive piece of collaboration, and not only does it keep the cost of production down, but it gives a lot of young people like actual like working experience and something on their CV, and we pay absolutely everyone that's like on our set, and I think you get a much more authentic feel for it, and especially with TriLife, like there's some media out there that I think is really destructive. If you look at like the Jeremy Kyle show, like, or Jerry Springer, it's like one of them kind of shows over in the UK. It's absolutely horrendous. Or you'll get like the music shows where they'll invite, like they know for a fact that the person can't sing, but they'll put them on X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or America's Got Talent, and these people are just shot down in front of like the nation. Or like Jeremy Kyle will take the most vulnerable of society and dress it up as some kind of talk show. And I think like media can be spun around. Like, why not give young people a platform to get their music showcased? We got like thousands and thousands of tracks sent in, and we used some of it for scoring to the footage. I had to listen to it all, man, honestly. Some of it wasn't good, like, but we created Try Radio. Like, Try Radio come from a 12-year-old young person that said, what are you going to do with the rest of the music? Why don't we create a radio show? So we created like a fake radio program, and it like, so young people can go on the site, they can watch the episodes. And another thing I think is like that whole celeb culture where these people are like unobtainable. They're just like sort of these things, like, why not just do what for our auditions. Last time we had 860 young people turn up for auditions, and we'll go out the way to spend time with every single person that comes through that door, no matter like how good their ability is. And because young people write it, they act in it, all of the music, everything is all contributed. All of our Facebook following and social media pace has come organically, just because after the first episode, we created the second. That's 2 sets of cast, 2 sets of crew, 2 sets of young people that have helped write it. They share it. Their parents, brothers, and sisters share it. Everyone knows that it's like it's there, designed to try and engage with young people. So when all the services are being stripped, like, it'll never replace a face-to-face workout, but at least it's entertaining, and it's got like it's not one of those public health messages that's like, don't do this, don't do that. You go on TriLife, do whatever you want, but like the character will live with the consequences, and you can go back and try it again and see what would happen. So I think we just, like, my 2 main concerns when I first set it up was, one, our workers going to use it as a tool that they can engage young people with. And that took a while for people to see the value in it, but like now we've got an e-learning section that's coming off the back of all of that footage, and then my second fear was like, are young people going to engage with it? But like, they just pounced on it, and it was really targeting the people that we wanted to use it. It was them that dragged the rest of the organisations along. So like I think it's authentic just because the issues that we cover are hard hitting. I mean, like, some of the scenes are horrendous, but like, that's reality for people. And,
do you have that problem, Julian? Like, do you like, when you're working with clients, you come up with something you think is an amazing idea, but it's like too hard hitting, or it's too something or other, and you feel like you have to weaken it in order to get it approved, but it's less effective?
Well, what we often face is the limitations of our own organization. So I would like to respond to Paul. To create really impact, I'm always searching for, on the organizational side, how can we scale this? So that's where we often try to find a trigger, because we can have an impact in a certain region or with a certain project, but what I would love to see is to be able to create real impact. We should scale ourselves, and that means that what we're basically doing needs to become independent from what we are doing. So we often think in frameworks that we keep, and that's what we call citizen science. We give people instruments where they can organize themselves to create the impact together without need of having us, but the need of needing us to create that impact.
Nidra and Vicki, this must be an area you've worked in, where you give kind of like toolkits to communities to kind of go out and spread the word almost, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that what you mentioned earlier about having to tone things down a bit for the client happens quite often, especially when you're working with government clients. They're very skittish about doing anything that might be considered, you know, cutting edge, or yeah, or talking about sex or drugs or anything like that. Even when the approach that you're proposing might be the best way and the most effective way to create change. So that definitely is something I've come up against in some of my work.
It's horrible. It's horrible to need to prove things. I always say, never a scientist has proven that reading a book works.
Yeah.
And we all do it.
And the NHS is the biggest buyer of fax machines.
Yeah.
Fax machines.
And I always say, let's not talk about e-learning and e-health. Let's talk about e-doing. No one here on the internet has learned how to cycle by reading a book. We learn cycling by doing it, by experimenting, and by falling, and by failing.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, to generate change, you have to make people do something. So I want to ask, how do you give the tools to people to actually be advocates for change and to generate this change? I mean, in your experience, and you know, Vicki, in your classroom or in your educational activities, and Nidra within a bigger community. So can you talk a little bit? Well, Paul and Yuri and in the individual. But how do you give these tools? I mean, how do you do that? Vicki?
I can start in on that. I think that I have a three-part process that I actually worked through very explicitly in a class one time, and maybe this is too conceptual, but I think it'll make sense, which is to say that I try to give people a history, a past, a present, and a future, and that is to say give them a context for the whatever the issue is, talk to people about where we are right now, and then imagine change. Really think about that, like that term of like Bruce Sterling design fiction, like create a story world, or create an alternative universe, create a critical creative utopia. So I think that's those kind of tools. It's not just the technology, but it's really a conceptual process that I try to work through with students, and basically giving them I think it's always important to have, particularly when you're bringing different groups together, and I typically work with university students working with a community partner that they go into knowing very little about. So just in terms of the understanding and respect of the community, we have to start with some kind of context. And then I go to this kind of active listening exercise, and then collaboration on imagining a future. So it's kind of more conceptual, but that's the kind of tool process I use.
Vicki, maybe what you basically learn them is how to design.
Yes, exactly.
So you give them the tools to design, and you give them the instruments for designing a potential solution.
Right, exactly. An alternative, you know,
yeah.
And imagine, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Guys, and, I'm very sorry. This was scheduled, Robert. I need to go for a tennis match. So it's a real life game. Thank you very much.
Really good to have you.
Pretending, Julie. It's games to help. I've got to prove how healthy I am.
Yeah.
I always keep physically active.
Learn by doing.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I will probably fail tonight. Thank you very much.
No, good luck.
Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And
So,
I think
go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Nidra.
Yeah, Nidra, please.
I was going to jump in and talk a little bit about a model that I built based on some work that Robert has done, a model that he created, and I adapted what he had to kind of figure out what are the elements that we need to include in a transmedia project in order to make sure that those building blocks for change are there, that everything is aligning to move us towards change. So I call it the immersive engagement model for change. And one thing that needs to be there is knowing what your theory of change is, using behavior change models that have been shown to be effective. And for example, in entertainment education, the Sabido model is one that is built on a lot of different social and cognitive theories, and kind of tells you the pieces that need to be included in the story that you're creating and in the project in order to build social norms, in order to provide models for certain behaviors so they can see what consequences, positive and negative, might happen, what kind of characters you need in there. You also need good storytelling, because if you don't have a good story, no one's going to pay attention to what you're doing. And I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of cases, especially in government-created programs that I've seen. The third thing you need is taking advantage of ubiquitous media. So knowing which media your audience spends its time on and making sure that you're there, and talking to them and using it to draw them in wherever they are during their day into that story so that they're engaged with it. The fourth thing is making it a participatory experience. So baking in ways that you can have that back and forth dialogue with your audience so that they have ways that they can participate in the story, whether it's role-playing as a character themselves or finding ways that they can have conversations with characters or with each other to build that social engagement. And then the last piece of it is finding real-world opportunities that the audience can engage with the issue. So if you've got a story about, I don't know, building about water issues and water conservation, providing ways that the audience can actually participate in building wells or contributing to building wells in communities that need them, or things like that. So finding ways that people can take the skills that they learned from the story or the motivation that they got from the story and applying it in the real world where they live.
Really good. I guess with the storytelling, you need to imagine a better future, just like Vicki was describing. You need to know where you want to get to.
That's right. Yeah, that's a big part of it.
And create some villains to overcome.
Yeah, every good story has something like that.
Or maybe always also show like where you don't want to get to.
Yeah, because yours is interactive, Paul. So you can say, well, if you take this path, these are the consequences.
I think like transmedia or like interactivity opens up so many. Like it's great because when I was a kid and I was watching Star Wars, like I didn't want Boba Fett to get eaten. Like you know what I mean? Like, that really like devastated us. But
Jar Jar Binks, there's got to be fair game to get eaten.
Oh mate, honestly, the most painful way. But, like I think like that all the technology is out there now, so. I think it'll take a long time for the broadcasters. We've been talking to like sort of, I'm not going to mention them actually, but we've been talking to a few commissioners, and some of the commissioners are like sort of, why would you want to make it interactive? Like linear stories are all right, and people are like sort of set in that mindset. For me personally, I grew up with my Spectrum computer, my Amiga, my PC, and I've just like gaming has always been part of my life, and I was devastated when my son beat us on Halo when he was like 13 years old. But like technology, sometimes I could be sitting in the living room with my kids and I've got to text them to try and get a response out of them. So I think you've got to embrace you know, like sort of new technology and sort of it's a force for good, man. Like Rob, if you look at like what you are doing, like. And Trial Life interactive drama, look what use it. There's so many different people out there using really cool like ways to engage with people. But that's what people expect, because when I was a kid growing up, we had like 3 or 4 TV channels, and you could bombard people with information, hoping that it was going to get through. But like nowadays, you can fast forward adverts, you can record, you can skip it, you can get it on online like iPlayer or Catch Up TV or whatever. And I think people expect to be engaged with, and they want to be part of it, and they want to be part of the community. And what better way than to involve people in the development process?
Exactly. And young people aren't even watching TV anymore. So there's no point in making a TV show about it because they'll never see it.
I think the other thing is what I found this last semester when I was teaching my social change class was that there's such a big difference in how different communities use different technologies or tools. So it's really important, again, to go back to the communities and ask them, like, so not get too hung up on, oh, I must put this out through Twitter, or oh, I must use YouTube videos, but rather use whatever it takes to communicate. And it may be multiple paths to do that. And again, it's very much a question of going back and having conversations, really doing your kind of study first, like not just what do you use, but how do you use it? What does it mean to you? To think about, again, what that outcome you want to have. Because we even found that the difference between how college students versus high school students were using things like Twitter, right, or Instagram, or even how they took selfies, what it meant for one group versus another. So it's very important to just have, again, it's a great opportunity to talk about how media is used, about media representation, not just even the technology to communicate, but what is it that you're communicating. So I think that those are all important things, and that's also the beauty of transmedia, is you can reach different groups in different kinds of ways and not get just so single-focused on, you know, I'm going to do some Twitter blast, and it really doesn't have an impact and doesn't speak to a particular community.
Yeah, I think with TriLife, we created the first episode up in Newcastle, and we based it basically on the diversity of Newcastle, which is predominantly white, right? And we were presenting it somewhere, and what was really telling was there was somebody came and sort of said, there's so many white people in here, could we not have more black and Asian characters and make it more diverse? And we'd actually based it on Newcastle. When we went down to London, southeast London, in the schools in southeast, well, the area that we were working, it's 78% black, minority ethnic, and we had exactly the same question posed to her when we presented episode 2. There's so many black young people in here, can we not have there should be more white people? And like, that was fascinating, and it's going to be interesting because we're going to be going to sort of Leeds, Bradford area next, because we've got now 3 episodes created. It'll be one of the areas that we're working in is predominantly Asian, so we'll create an episode with predominantly Asian characters. It's going to be really telling. If we get that same question, there's so many Asian characters in here, but it's amazing like how modern day media sort of ticks all of them boxes. With the last episode, it was like a really similar kind of thing. Like, well, we need someone that's gay, we need someone that's lesbian, someone that's bi, someone that's black, and I was like, this is not a tick box thing. Like, let's just get the young people in. Let's forget about all of that kind of stuff. Just get the young people in and create the episodes. I think, and one other thing about media is we created this with the professionals and covered all of the issues that they needed to cover within the episode. So it could be like the foundations of unhealthy relationship or drugs and alcohol will feature predominantly in most of the episodes, and we would slot all of these things in. And even though we'd created it with the professionals, when we went and presented it to them for the first time, they would watch it back and be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And that would be it, right? So I would say, well, did you see the bit where the unhealthy relationship started, where the character was starting to get aggressive with his partner? Or did you see the bit where there was a young girl being exploited in the background? And people are so used to consuming media the way they are through like TV dramas and stuff. It wasn't until it was pointed out that they could actually see the educational points that was in there. And then when they watched it the second time, that's when they're seeing it as a learning tool, and that's why we created the e-learning section. So it takes all of those possible variations and strips it down into linear stories, and allows it's got a narrated version on there, and we have to actually pinpoint and demonstrate, like, this is the point where the character's in the start of an unhealthy relationship. The girl in the background who looks like she's wasted on the settee is actually in a really vulnerable position.
Sorry, I don't have my phone on.
Yeah, really interesting.
Really good.
It's especially like just spelling it out, isn't it, to make sure that people.
Rob, you know what it is, like, people just like consume media just like so readily without actually thinking of like what they're actually consuming, and
that's why it's so powerful, I think.
Exactly.
It just goes right in without us really processing it most of the time.
Really interesting. So let's say like there's someone watching this this webinar and they've got a project and they're wondering, like, there's an issue that's really burning inside them, and normally it's not something local, like we don't, you know, there's too much dog's mess on the pavement or something. It's normally like something big, like I want to save world hunger, or I want to like save the rainforest. Where should they start? Nigel, let's start with you. Like, what's the first thing they should do?
I think the first thing they should do is really hone in on what is it that they are trying to accomplish. And I've already said this before, so I don't want to repeat myself again, but I really do think that that's something that gets missed a lot, is that people focus on raising awareness without thinking, what is the outcome that I want from what I'm creating? And I think that really has to be the guiding force in everything that you do in your project.
Because I think that's much more tricky, actually, because I think in some ways it's easy to criticize the way things are now, but to imagine a different future, and then, like as Vicky's doing, like plotting a roadmap to get there, or even if you don't have all the answers, maybe that's part of the project to say, like, this is the future I imagine. What future do you imagine, and what are the steps that we get? That's much more difficult, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you're talking about, is a great way to bring in a lot of other voices and get people to participate, to create something larger out of a single project, to bring many, many voices together. And through that dialogue and through that sharing, to really build empathy for each other and generate new ideas for how it might happen.
Really good.
Yeah, so I think that's the key. Is I would also say outcome. You have to have some sense of that goal, but if you're really going to make change, it's not going to be just one person on sort of these larger issues. It really is about creating community. So that seems to be, you know, one of the key factors you have to work on too, and that happens through making things together, through dialogue, through practices that foster community.
And one thing that I wanted to ask, because it was a question from the audience actually, not only building the community, but how do you sustain this community over time? How do you make this community last and connect people together? Can you, I mean, I'm going to start with Nidra. What do you think about that?
I think that's something that social media can be really strong for. It's the kind of tool that really is good for community building, where if you have an organization that can serve that role as kind of a community manager and sustain that over time by bringing in the key players, the people who are most interested, the stakeholders who really care about this issue and want to reach more people, bringing them together into a coalition and connecting them to other people. I think social media is great for that.
But I think even doing things like having surveys from time, you know, like if your group is dispersed, for example, because I know in this one group that I work in, we had all this social media possibilities, and it was just dead in the water. So what we did is we went back and we said, well, let's survey this group, like why aren't they participating? And so we did surveys about what their interests were, and had meetings and built up some feedback, and then started then using our social media toward those issues. And then suddenly our community was alive again after you know, many years of kind of, you know, again, gets very kind of on life support. So I think just really that goes back to kind of dialogue questions.
Listening.
You know, communication and dialogue.
Well, sometimes I think if you have a community and you grow it over a number of years, the things that are important to them when you first set up might not be the same things that are important over
Exactly.
time, mightn't it? You know, things change.
Exactly.
You know? So, I mean, the other thing that I thought was, you know, we often think of like this, like the pyramid of participation, that you have like, you know, a sort of minority at the top who are very active and less people. But I also think, like, in terms of, like, if you've got this issue and you want to change the world, you can't change everybody at once, and so you should find the people that are most receptive or the most close to actually changing, that they need to make, like, to go to Julian's point, they make the smallest amount of change to come on board and start there, rather than trying to boil the ocean with all these big, like, something that's important to me is like vegetarianism. So like, I wouldn't try to convince someone who's like a rabid meat eater that he shouldn't eat meat, because it's just going to fall on deaf ears. But there's probably people that would like to be vegetarian, but they think that they can't find the right restaurants, or they don't have enough recipes, or it's only about eating salad. And so there's like smaller things that I can do to convert those people before starting on the other big meat eaters. It's that type of idea, I'm thinking. Paul, I'm going to start on you next.
No, I'm really good notion. I think our approach, I can only talk from like sort of TriLife's point of view, but what my first port of call was to engage with youth groups, right? My background was youth work. I knew loads of youth groups, but then I went and got the youth council and the youth forum and got them on board. They loved the idea. They really wanted to help try and design TriLife. They loved the concept. So then I went to the face-to-face workers, and most of the projects were just like 100% behind the idea. You know, like there was a couple. Then when we went up a management level, and there was a woman who said, like, no, young people won't like this. Young people won't do that. And beside us, I had the chair of the youth forum and chair of the youth council, who said, like, well, we represent all young people in the region, and we don't want this. So, like, once I had their support, I then fired emails off to the directors of public health. And luckily enough, one of the guys had been trained in Dundee with a lot of game designers, and he got the concept. He used to love the old choice-based adventure books, and that's how TriLife got started. But I think, like, any advice I would give anyone is, no matter what anyone says, like, don't give up on trying. I had so many people, you can't, like, because our scripts are like 455 pages long, minimum. Feature films like 95 pages. And I had people say, like, you can't film that. There's no way you can film that. There's no way you can write that. And I sat down with 3 young people, fed them pizza, and we did write that, and like, we did manage to film that. And I think if you can get people behind it, people will contribute without even thinking. Like, for me, TriLife isn't a job, it's part of my lifestyle. And a lot of them young people that have been involved in TriLife, some of the young people in the first episode went on to win 5 BAFTAs, and someone from the second episode got cast in Ridley Scott's movie. And when you look at all of the opportunities that the young people have had, we're like now going to be working in Leeds because we've just been commissioned for another 3 episodes.
I think that's how Natalie views Conductor. It's more of a lifestyle choice for you now, Natalie, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But like, it is. It's one, I think, like, if you're passionate about it, then it's not a job, is it? It's part of your lifestyle, so you just do it. And I think, like, that's like the thing, is trying to find something you're passionate about, and you will discover other people that are passionate about it. But like, TriLife, what it is today, is a million miles away, Rob, from what it was, because any person can come up with an idea, and if it's good, it'll go in. And it's a huge piece of collaboration. Like, you'll find someone that will say, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And then we're just like, yeah, let's do it. Or you'll get a young person with a particular skill, like, say, a graphic designer, who will come in and say, I could add to this and do this. And like, that's how, like, TriLife's been built, really. I can't really take credit for what TriLife is today, because it is a huge piece of collaboration. And then,
I think sticking with a passion is important. Because I imagine there must be lots of people like looking around for projects. They're documentary makers, so they're looking for a project, and it might not, you know, like it might be a subject they're interested in, but are they really passionate about it? And that's a different thing. And maybe, you know,
like luckily for us, recently we've had like a lot of academics like run with TriLife. They can see the potential, but like what all that's added is we get like say like a psychologist who'll say like, Paul, do you mind if I do a piece of research on this, because I think we could like really bring about behavior change, and they may be interested in say the frontal cortex of your brain that is responsible for like forward thinking, or then we might get a public health doctor or professor that will contact with and say like, oh my god, like you could do this, 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 and this. And I just like embrace it all. Me, I'm just like, yeah, man, let's like chuck it in and see what we can come out with. It's nice having like a mixing pot, I think, and I think that's what like sort of transmedia projects do. Because if you can engage with the people you're trying to target, and then engage with the people who are trying to engage with those people, it's all about collaboration in it, I think.
Great. We are coming to the end, so I think we have 5 minutes or something like that. So I would like to ask you like a brief conclusion or piece of knowledge that you want to share. I mean, Paul already told us like passion is one of the most important things, and that is great. But you know, like a small conclusion that you want to give. So Vicki, can you?
Yeah, I think maybe what I would emphasize is trying to find ways to construct dialogue, find ways and not be, even though we're talking about media, not be focused on the tool, but rather the process of dialogue. And what works to create a dialogue. And it might be multiple things, multiple pathways to dialogue. And also the actual making of something can create a dialogue. So I think those are that process of making can create a dialogue. So I think if you really want to have social change, you have to build a community, and the only way you're going to have a community is if people talk to each other and not talk past each other, but really have dialogue. So ways to do that, I think, are key.
Really good. What about you, Nidra? What do you want to close with?
Well, I think the thing that excites me so much about transmedia storytelling as a tool for bringing about social change is that we're able to reach people in so many different ways throughout their day in the kinds of media that they're paying attention to. So it used to be, in my field, social marketing, it used to be that we would create the 30-second commercial that we would put on TV or on the radio or whatever, and that was the standard. Us just talking at them and hoping that it would stick. But things have changed a lot. People don't even watch the commercials anymore, let alone listen to those kinds of PSAs. And so I think finding ways that we can really engage people where they are is an exciting prospect, and using stories and using various kinds of media to make it more interactive, to make it something that people want to be part of and want to pay attention to is really the key, and we have so much opportunity these days to be able to do that.
Great. Paul, do you want to close with something?
I think my final thing would just be I think collaboration is key. I think finding people with different skill sets is being essential for TriLife. And where I saw TriLife at day one, I couldn't imagine like sort of like where TriLife is today. I think, but like, the most important message, I guess, is like just never give up. Like even if everyone else around you thinks like I've been just called crazy like 100 times, but like just do your thing and embrace new technology and embrace like sort of people that can add value to what you're doing.
Awesome.
Aye.
Thanks. Robert, would you like to?
No, I was just thinking we didn't really touch on it explicitly in this webinar, but to think how, you know, if you're working with technology, how you can leave a lasting solution behind. so that it's not just about building, it's actually solving, and that there's lots of things now that could actually make a difference to people. And you think of all the intelligent people that work on these types of projects, it could actually leave a lasting solution behind. That's all I'm going to say.
There was somewhere where me and Rob were at. I can't remember where it was, but we're there recently anyway. And when Rob, was it in Sheffield? It was Sheffield, wasn't it?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So someone had said I'd introduced Rob to this conversation, and I'd asked Rob what he does, and I'd already asked about TriLife, and they were like, "Well, I used to, not in competition." And I was like, "No, not at all. Like, Rob's my mate. Like, we're going to help each other out." Do you know what I mean? And like, that's one thing I found about like the transmedia community is like, why not take the TriLife concept and run with it and do something better? Like, I love like anything like that. Like, don't be afraid of like innovation. And I think like a lot of media is like really sort of hemmed in by people trying to be really protective, and I've never been that way. I just like sort of try to share my ideas, and if someone can do something better, then good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll learn from them as well, and they can learn from what we've done. And there was a question that come through though on Twitter from Andrew Ginman, right? Can we do this before we go?
Oh, yeah.
He says, how do you assess impact both short and long term for behaviour change by ambiguous media? So I'm not sharing it, but I will answer it first since I've read it. Like, I think short term, like one of the things that we realised was we engaged very quickly with a lot of young people. Long term, the impact for us, I guess the way that we've assessed it is that professionals are now diving on board and wanting to engage with TriLife in whatever their professional field or interest. They've found their little niche, how they can develop TriLife.
Great. Really good. Oh, thank you so much. I need to wrap up, even though it's so interesting. I don't want to, but I need to. We're on time, but I'd like to tell you all thank you very much for being here and for sharing all this knowledge and all your experience with us. And I am going to encourage to continue the conversation over Twitter, because I think there are several things that we can continue discussing and answering questions. And so let's all do that. And I'd like to say a final thing. We are organizing Conductor Conference 2015, and one of our streams is Transmedia for Change. So all these topics will be relevant and important in the conference. So I invite you all, the listeners, to check it out, and please join us, everyone who can. Paul and Julian will be talking, and Vicki, we're waiting for your proposal. So hopefully it's going to be amazing.
And will that be on October 16th, Natalie, in London?
Yes, in October 16th in London. That is important.
Okay. So that's the Conductor Conference, October 16th in London. Okay, I'll be there.
Please, know the date. Okay. Thank you very much, all, and it was a great discussion. And
thank you, guys.
And see you at the next webinar, audience, listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Everyone. Bye.